Every 4 years, a heroic battle of historic metal monsters is fought at the borders of the Swiss cantons Uri and Glarus. A revival of the legendary fumes and gravel race held from 1922 to 1934. We call it the Klausen Memorial. In 1922, the Zurich police prohibited a race over the nearby Albis Pass, and so the Swiss Automobile Club moved their annual hill climb race to Canton Glarus. They mailed invitations to car fans all over Switzerland, and that's how our story started. The Bergprüfungsfahrt für Automobile became the Klausen Rennen, the most famous and dangerous hill race of its time. Glarus is the meeting venue and control point in one. All in all, 66 cars were announced. Gentleman driver Velladini brought his Touran Steyr and hotelier Kracht his Bugatti. The much-admired cars were weighed and, if necessary, trimmed with sandbags to comply with the regulations. Fuel was only available at the Riffel garage, and on Landsgemeindeplatz, the ones who had shared with the ones who needed. The Volkswagen, a car for everybody, was still far away. And now, people are streaming into rain-soaked Glarus, just like in those days, to admire the same cars, 80 years older. It goes without saying that participants still come to this event from all over the world, but now most of them trailer their cars instead of driving.
Well, we left Manchester on Saturday morning, and we have come in 200-mile stages, but we've stopped in places for 2 nights and so on. But the journey started properly in Zeebrugge on Sunday morning, really.
Reliable technique, huh?
Well, a very pleasant technique.
Typically British understatement. Who else came? From Europe, US, Australia and Venezuela, enthusiasts bought sports and racing cars like Auto Union, Alfa Romeo, Bugatti, Maserati, Mercedes-Benz, Opel, O'Reilly, etc. to Glarus. May I introduce Shanna? And that misfiring sound is her Riley MPH, a prototype of Raymond Mace from 1935 with supercharged 1.75-litre engine. Admitted to the race are all cars no younger than 1939. including motorcycles, who have participated since 1925 but were never really recognized by the crowd. But some really special bikes made it here. Like the record-breaking machine from 1929, the pride and joy of dealer Alex Löchinger. In this tent, the cars are registered, checked and numbered. Typically Swiss, spending a whole day for scrutinizing. Nothing to be found on this Mercedes SSK, no more sandbags. So what is checked today? Losing oil, losing brakes, which are a joke anyway, lamps and steering, etc.
Sicherheit wird sehr groß geschrieben, sprich Bremsen, Lenkung, also das ist das, was wir hier auch prüfen.
Wow, that doesn't look like the 30s. An 8-cylinder from 1954. It replaces the Mercedes-Benz W154, which would have been the successor to record holder Caracciola's W25 from 1934. But this one is okay too for us. It has 250 horsepower more and retains the same name. Silberpfeil, the silver arrow. All buttoned up and ready to go. So, out into the rain and the crowd. Only a few hundred so far, but more than 30,000 are expected over the next 4 days.
1, 2, 1, 2, ja. Bis jetzt von VW. VW hat übrigens auch unter der Firma Automobil Bugatti SS am heutigen Anlass bis zum Sonntag Bugatti Atlantik am Start.
The dealers here hope to sell a month's worth of books, gifts and souvenirs each day. And talk about catering. Dozens of cattle will sacrifice their lives to be reborn in thousands of steaks on the grill. The Klausen Myth as money-making machinery. It boosts the canton's economy and brings in about 6 million Swiss francs spent on food, lodging and local shopping. Why do people bring their old-timers here and sacrifice their precious time for such a weird hobby?
Well, the work is of course professional. As a hobby, we do a few rallies a year, like the Mille Miglia, Winter Marathon, lots of out-of-the-country rallies, quite international. We also do historic Grand Prix during Europe, England, Belgium. We like the hill climbs, and because the cars are been normally used for hill climbs in the early days, in the 1930s, we thought it was fun to join it and see what happens.
Fun is just one side of the coin. On the other side, a lot of uncomfortable things can happen, only to drive up a hill. Not even justified as a dangerous pass after all? To get to the bottom of it, let's drop in at the local police station. Between tiled oven and wood paneling, here in this 1862 mansion, maybe the police chief can explain the myth and attraction of the Klausen race.
Sehen Sie, das Klausen-Memorial ist ja eine schöne alte Tradition.
Like any other alpine pass, the Klausen has an allure dating from when the Romans moved goods and news across the Alps. Inspiring. In fact, the spirit of Klausen lives up there.
Das birgt eine Tradition mit sich, die sich auf die Generationen überträgt. Alle Transversalen haben diesen Mythos, haben diesen Genius Loci, so auch der Klausen. Also man kann sagen, es weht da der Geist des Klausens.
But that inspiration can't be the whole story. We talked to Otto Ackermann, who is putting Pampers on his old Morgan to stop the oil leak. Otto, how do you explain the Klausen myth? That is hard to explain, he says, but maybe it's the unique combination of historic environment and old cars. Breger really made something possible that we all love. Bernhard Breger, for the first time that name comes up, is the initiator of the memorial. They call him Mr. Klausen Myth. I will introduce this man to you a little later. We leave Glarus and move 25 kilometers further up the hill to Lintal. Liental, as they call it, has always been the starting line. On our search for Bernhard Breger, we find ourselves at the organization's headquarters. All the volunteers and 2 full-time employees are as busy as bees here. They organize everything from marketing rumors to bus tickets, from VIP dinners to toilet rolls. In fact, they are Breger's right hands. But who is Bernhard Breger exactly?
Bernhard Breger, für mich ist ein sehr
He is a visionary, someone who inspires, a maker. And she says that the world only turns on thanks to people like him. Big words.
Da braucht es dann noch zusätzlich ein paar Leute, aber ja, es geht nicht weiter ohne Visionäre.
And big visions you need when you intend to bring the whole world to little Canton Glarus. With drums and, well, trumpets, Breger invites guests who have only one thing in common, an almost gourmet love of petrol. That's what it must have been like at the Glarnerhof in the Roaring '20s. They come from all over the world just to see each other again and play cool, so as not to seem nervous. Sitting peacefully at the same table are on the one side those who own. They have the money to buy any car they want and the mechanics to go with it. And on the other side are the ones who do all their own tuning and restoration. Starting with practically nothing but a dream, they work day and night, restoring and modifying again and again until they finish up with the car they always wanted. 2 different kinds of ownership. But tonight's feast unites them at the same overbooked table. And there is our host, Bernhard Breger, surrounded with his gorgeous and talented daughters.
Müssen Sie sich beeilen.
So viel Orgel noch. Ja, doch. Apropos treibende Kraft. Willst du noch so? Weißt?
It's the morning of the great race. Through the fog, only the breathing of the steel horses can be heard. driver's camp, the place where the bikes go backward. A little adjustment here, a last bit of tuning there, and a final prayer to the god of technology. The racetrack. Starting in Linthal, the curves snake up the hill, straighten shortly after the canton border, and twist again mercilessly at places called Jägerbalm, Vorfrucht, or Clues. The destination, after 128 curves, 21.5 kilometers, and a climb of 1,288 meters, this is your goal, if you make it. Here come the first conformity test participants. They have to reach the top in precisely 25 minutes. Three-wheelers are first, and in the 30s, nobody cared if they were small cars or big bikes. Followed by motorcycles and sidecars, 121 participants on 3 or 2 wheels in total. The big names in bike building were Moto Sakosh, Rudge, Scott, Sunbeam, Moto Guzzi, NSU, Condor, and Norton, whose numbers fit the worldwide lead of those machines in the 30s. Number 36, Peter Egloff on Condor D50. Overtaking, he represents the modern style of biking, heading with his body into the corner. And here is Otto again with 2 cylinders on the way to 3rd place. Number 53, Max Rieder on Norton International, built 1936 with a 500cc engine, overtaking elegantly on the inside. And here comes Erwin Botzner's Gilera 8 Bologna, a works machine brought specially from Italy to the Klausen. The Indian, once America's most legendary motorcycle, today this Power Plus from 1918 is one of the last. After all, it is the oldest bike at the memorial, a 1000cc side-valve 2-cylinder job ridden by Kurt Krüger from Germany. Number 31, Roland Schmid on a Condor A50, built 1932. 30 horsepower out of a 500cc shaft drive mag engine. Finally restored just in time for the race. Sepp Zuber of Glarus used to ride a 250cc Condor back in 1926. Upgraded to 500cc, it won him fastest time in 1932. But it took him 1 week to make it back home from the finishing party. Poor fellow. In the old days, the steel riders were started every 3 minutes. Today, every 15 seconds. That's how you meet people. The weather conditions are a standing joke at the Klausen. Here's a radio excerpt from 1934.
Ja, das Wetter. Das ist so eine Sache. Gestern und auch vorgestern goss es, was vom Himmel herunter konnte. Heute Morgen sieht es sich etwas besser an und jetzt sitzen wir wenigstens im Trockenen.
While the motorbikes still head to the top, the sports cars get ready. Okay, let's forget the weather. This 1937 Lancia Aprilia starts in the clouds, drifts through the sunshine, and disappears in the rain. Legendary indeed. Let's take a closer look at the racetrack now. Right after the start, the first curve has been cobbled ever since 1925. Tricky and dangerous. At the last memorial in 1998, this threw out quite a few drivers. Peter Kraus on a perfect Jaguar SS 100. Please, Peter, no rocking and rolling now. And here comes Shanna. But today her Riley MPH is going hill hunting without dogs. Young-timer in old-timer. At Sweet 20, Beatrice Breger intends to give the experts a run for their money. But her Derby K4 Cosette is only stuttering up the hill. Well-meant advice of saving weight with a half-empty tank is of no use if you have no petrol pump. Built in 1934, this car relied on gravity feed, which is annoyingly inadequate uphill. Shortly before the well-lit new tunnel, the course reverts to its original track of the 30s, through two dark holes. Get into it, it's like someone covers your eyes with his hand, and you have to turn sharp left on slimy ground. Muddy water drips from the ceiling and makes the room swampy. You finally get out of that tunnel, but then into the next. Ugly, dangerous, and very risky. Now the sister is starting, sporty and self-secure. She is piloting the only Georges Ira, a unique 3-litre six-cylinder dating back to 1928. Again, 6 cylinders, but only 1300 cc, 50 horsepower, but fast enough to react. After the 2 tunnels, a few hairpin bends lead up to Marianne Zweifel's Bergli restaurant. In summertime, the local police find her place ideal for ticketing would-be racing drivers. The last few curves through the woods, and we reach Urnerboden. This is not the destination yet, but 600 meters of neutralization. In the early days, they measured the top speed over a kilometer here. The clock stopped when the string ripped. Today, the road conditions have become much too dangerous for old cars with fixed axles and leaf springs. To drive the old top speeds of up to 200 kilometers per hour on that bumpy road would be suicidal. So the organization committee has decided only to drive at 50 kilometers per hour, not to overtake, and to restart immediately. In other words, a kind of flying neutralization. As the British say, there's no such thing as bad weather, only the wrong clothes. The Blue Rally, a very rare French car from Fribourg, unfortunately out of the race. From the bottom of Clariden Mountain, the course winds up to the Jägerbalm, watched over by Altman Arnold's cows. Good effort, Bruno Siefrig's Singer Le Mans. And he knows what he put into it. Everything. A Lagonda M35 with 4.5-litre six-cylinder engine passing the unwillingly parked Frenchman. Elegantly invited to overtake by David Downs, the Alfa Romeo 8C Monza. Heavyweight, a 4.5-litre Bentley. Alex Boller is pushing it up the Cluse and into the fourth-route. He'll certainly feel it in his shoulders tomorrow. Screaming streamlined Deutsch Bonnet, a typical car of the late 30s, built for pushing top speed to unknown limits. Bugatti 35B, 2.3-litre 8-cylinder. This car crashed terribly during the Saint-Agel hillclimb back in 1933. And here, Peter Krause rolls on. Only a few more bends from Sauboden, pig ground, to the finishing line. And what looks so speedy through the tricks of our cameraman is in fact the crowding of the last few meters. There was no such thing in the early days as a timing test. Today, trying to be exactly on time can cause a synchronized snail race. What about the race categories? Bernhard explains that it's not just an outing for them, but pure racing. Not too serious, but nevertheless, last time in 1998, some of the drivers made it in less than 14 minutes, which is pretty fast.
Letzte Mal denke, da waren doch Zeiten unter 14 Minuten dabei. Das ist schon recht schnell.
The course is not really classified as dangerous, even under bad weather conditions. In the rain, people drive more carefully. There are no dogleg curves, curves that tighten towards the end, and drivers have a good overview with no hidden changes of direction. But what did the organization do for the participants' safety?
Für die Sicherheit der Fahrer ist ein Team seit 1,5 Wochen im Einsatz.
We have a team exclusively working on safety for the last 10 days, Albert reports.
Das heißt, Schalltafeln montiert an Leitplanken, an
All kinds of structures and signs have been installed, new red and white water-filled New Jersey elements, and cushioning with 1,800 bales of straw, including barriers and fences to protect spectators.
montiert worden an der Strecke. Und alle diese Kleinigkeiten natürlich mit Wegweiser und Kurventafeln und so weiter.
Natürlich kann man die Strecke nicht in Watte.
Of course, you can't make everything safe, can't cotton wool everything, Bernhard says, so drivers wear the usual Fiat stuff like helmets and fire-resistant overalls. The problem is that the cars themselves have no inbuilt safety features like modern vehicles.
Socken und Schuhen, wie das die FIA vorschreibt. Die Fahrzeuge selber sind natürlich schon problematisch. Es sind natürlich keine Fahrzeuge mit passiven Sicherheitseinrichtungen.
And he knows what he's talking about. In the 80s, Bernhard won third prize in the famous Monte Carlo rally with a 1300cc Alfa Sud. But if you want to experience a real British race category, just take a closer look at the three-wheelers. Bad boys' playground. And this is the arch leader, Bill Tour. And right before him, his countryman Gary Caroline. With his 1932 Morgan Racing, Bill was fastest on the Klausen last time and this year as well. With his partner supine to cut wind drag, he made it to the top in 14 minutes 39 seconds. Why do Bill and his partner have these ears on their helmets? Well, to keep the cows company up at the start. We just wanted to show them we mean no harm, even if we do like steaks. Watch out, Gary. Not so George Derbyshire on his 1938 Morgan F4. With its cased-in design, typical radiator and a four-cylinder inline engine, George's contraption seems much more like a car. And this is inevitable on the Klausen. The fast ones who started later overtake the slightly more cautious who left earlier. Shaken, but not stirred. Charles Reynolds on Morgan Supersport 1933 with Jap engine. Sightseeing with a little help from his friend. By the way, three-wheelers were invented by Morgan in 1909 as a popular alternative to expensive cars. At that time, they cost less than £90 sterling, which was, however, quite a lot of money in those days. Not until the Second World War were three-wheelers ousted by Volkswagen, so Morgan started to build wooden cars. Now, let's have a look at the sidecars. Ruckstuhl with his partner Dinton from Basel. Piloting a 1933 German NSU Bullus SS with 500cc engine. Moving body weight in curves was only allowed in 1925 if the feet were kept in the sidecar. Peter Greenfield on a 1939 500cc Veloset MSS. Keep your feet in the sidecar, I said. Greenfield's time of 17:32 makes him the winner in this category. A slippery mixture, rain and oil. Sidecar teams from Basel already made a strong impression back in 1934. Sterkle and Sterkle, husband and wife, won with an identical NSU works machine, 45 seconds ahead of Aubert from Geneva on Norton. Now comes Stefan Freuler with daughter Stephanie in the sidecar. The two-cylinder 600cc engine has some trouble at the start, but finally underway, the British Triumph twin-speed does it easily. The 1979 model keeps the 1938 model in trim. Father and son Murray from Allschwil, Basel again, on a Swiss Condor Grand Sport 522, 1930. Murray's Jurassian Condor is powered by a Geneva-made MAG engine. These were the leading Swiss motorcycle manufacturers in the 20s and 30s. Ted Parker of England and his daughter on a 1929 Scott Squirrel TT. And that's how to do it in style, with the pillion passenger sitting elegantly upright. The 560cc Scott two-stroke engine, easily heard despite the din, is water-cooled inside and outside this time. Right back in 1908, Alfred Angus Scott started manufacturing two-stroke engines well ahead of their times. He used and invented ribbed pistons, encapsulated front forks, kick change and kick start. Scott was a great race champion and participated in races like the famous TT Tourist Trophy on the Isle of Man. Back from the past, these steel stallions want to take a ride with today's knights. The Harley-Davidson is ready to go, as well as the Scott Flying Squirrel. From the name, we already know which one is two-stroke. German Klaus Kretschmar, ready to torture his squirrel. Curtain call for Alex. Blue flags say, "There's someone behind you, let him pass." Alex on his way into the black hole. Klaus Kretschmar and Freddie Bossert, two identical 556cc machines built only a year apart, 1929 and 1930. Big show for little nibblers. Harley and Davidson, two famous turn-of-the-century families revived in this 1000cc twin-cam RR. Lüchinger celebrates the riding style of the old times, using his leg as a counterbalance in the curves. A 1939 Italian Moto Guzzi, pushed by Joe Kaufmann. Right in front is another star of this year's memorial, a Moto Sakosh F50. Only a few of these works racing bikes were built. Joe is impatient and misses the start block. The Moto Guzzi loses its grip on water and oil, but only temporarily. What this private racing biker bought as production machine is actually a Moto Sakosh C35A. Today, Klaus Hürlimann rides this 1928 model with overhead valve 350cc engine. Indefatigable fans are waiting for Willi Jahrberg. His 500cc shaft-drive Moto Sakosh F50 was the ultimate development stage of the successful MAG racing engines. Hürlimann, who took part in the 1993 and 1998 Klausen Memorials, goes on this year to win the 350cc category with a time of 17:33, following in the footsteps of his idol Ernst Henny, who won in 1934. Moto Sakosh, famous Swiss brand by the Dufour brothers of Geneva, made its name with Sakosh outboard engines for bicycles. Here's Stefan Genscher on a modified Moto Sakosh D50, which was raced in East Germany until the 60s. He too is winner in his class this year. Alex has reached the top. His wet distributor troubles during training are all forgotten. Today his bike made up for all that with a great ride. This is reputed to be Claude Serrosol's record-breaking machine, but no less than 3 bike owners here lay claim to this distinction. So, how to prove authenticity? The bike's patina looks really authentic, but what else? So Alex had a police check carried out on the engine number stamp. Together with photographic evidence of surface scratches on the cylinder block, this is final proof of originality. The scratches are a legacy of Claude Serrosol's crash back in 1929, which did not prevent him from setting up a new record of 17:22 that year. So, what's it like riding a champion's machine?
Ja, das ist das Problem. Die Maschine ist ja im Zustand wie 1929 und auch noch mit
Alex explains the problems of driving a bike with beaded tires. They need pumping up hard so as not to lose them in the curves. On hard surfaces like today, the ride is uncomfortable, but they were very helpful in the old days on gravel.
Harte Federung durch das und in der Kurve und auch über den ordenen Boden, wo ja jetzt die Zeit gestoppt wird, aber das Gleiche muss das Zeug so richtig festhalten, dass es nicht aus den Händen fällt. Weil dazu mal war ja offene Straße und die offene Straße war natürlich das viel idealer zum Fahren. Da wurde so richtig gerutscht und nicht geschlagen.
Cars come in, we talk to some of the participants. Like Joost Wildbolz, famous Swiss fashion photographer.
Ganz gut, aber eigentlich war es fürchterlich. Wir hatten alles.
During the training, we had a little bit of everything. Fog and rain, grease and oil. Crazy, but fun.
Und zu allem war die Strecke von unten bis oben völlig verölt. Also es war sehr lustig, sehr spannend. Man ist einfach nur gerutscht.
And George Kaufmann nearly got thrown out of his car by the bumpy road.
Also fast aus dem Wagen. Man zum Teil mit allen 4 Rädern abheben, aber sonst ist es eigentlich gut. Macht Spaß.
Legendary Jochen Maas, ex-Formula One pilot, is here with the Mercedes W196, a historical car that needs to be taken care of. So he is not pushing it to the limit. With instruments that he can't operate, staying on the safe side is priority.
Also ist das sowieso Pi mal Daumen. Deswegen fahre ich zügig. Ich rase nicht, aber ich fahre recht zügig halt. Ne? Deswegen, ich habe keinen übertriebenen Ehrgeiz, hier jetzt irgendetwas zu tun. Dazu müsste ich mehr trainieren. Man muss es auch ernst nehmen. Die Bergrennen haben ihre Eigenheiten und die Kurven sind die Kurven. Ich meine, und hier gibt es viele Stellen, wo man ganz leicht einen kleinen Fehler machen kann. Und deswegen muss man auch das mit einer gewissen Ernsthaftigkeit angehen. Und um dann richtig schnell zu fahren, muss ich einfach das Ganze trainiert haben. Ich habe früher die Europabergmeisterschaft mal gefahren, 70. Habe ich 8 Tage vorher trainiert auf den langen Bergen. Damit ich wirklich das völlig verinnerlicht habe. Und wenn das nicht der Fall ist, dann bin ich eben immer ein bisschen im Risikobereich, den ich aber nicht überschauen will oder kann. Deswegen fahre ich eben so, dass es kein Problem ist.
400 vehicles are registered, but only 217 will run the 2 races required for final classification. The old technique is just too vulnerable.
Nun, Sie wissen, zum Funktionieren des Benzinmotors gehört nicht nur Benzin, sondern auch Luft. Dann explodiert ja erst diese Benzingasmenge und erzeugt die Kraft, die den Wagen in Vorwärts treibt. Nun muss offenbar auf einer gewissen Höhe die Luft, sagen wir mal, dünner sein oder jedenfalls anders beschaffen. Man soll darüber noch gar nicht so genau Bescheid wissen. Sodass die Motoren plötzlich in einer bestimmten Höhe eben einfach anfangen zu streichen. Sie schnappen, könnte man geradezu sagen, sie schnappen nach Luft.
The metal avalanche floods back, and we stay a little up here, right below the Meerestöckli. For the first time since 1934, the flags of Switzerland, Glarus and Uri are flying on the pavilion, hoisted by the president of the Klausen Friends Association. Founded in 1995, the association currently has 300 members. But what does it do for the Klausen?
Wir haben ein relativ umfangreiches Archiv über die früheren Klausenrennen.
Beatrice mentions the huge amount of historical records they put together and the annual meeting of old-timer owners, including those with cars built after 1939. This association admits Healey's, Ferraris, Alpines and Porsches with a recommended minimum age limit of 30 years. The pavilion, built in 1932, is one of the oldest buildings in European car racing history. A good many others have now been demolished, such as the grandstand in Bern. Sepp Herger and Eddie Strebel sit together and talk of old times over white wine from the valley and cheese from Uri. They tell stories about the little building that became a milk depot and then a goat shed.
Zuerst für dieses Haus haben sich die kulturellen Institutionen eingesetzt.
Funnily enough, Sepp says, it was the Heimatschutz who first wanted to preserve the pavilion. Sponsors like car manufacturers were second.
Es ist doch ein sehr wichtiges Objekt über die Region hinaus.
Theo Bayer, of watch fame and a Klausen driver, didn't like the slow reaction of some timekeepers. So he invented a little black box, Sepp explains. A water-filled tube was placed on the finishing line to trigger a camera when the front wheels passed over it. The camera photographed a watch and thus provided proof of the exact time. The disadvantage was it took 3 hours to develop the film.
Und sobald die ersten zwei Räder darüber polterten, dann wurde der Impuls ausgelöst und die Leica-Kamera blitzte auf die Uhr. Und die Uhr war dann die definitive und die endgültige Zeit. Der einzige Nachteil, der es hatte, war dann die Entwicklung. Man musste etwa 3-4 Stunden warten, bis man dann der richtige Filmset von diesen Uhren.
Who came to race over the Klausen Pass in those days? Eddie mentions the big names like Caracciola, Novolari, Stuck and others. All the big names in racing sport history came to fight the Klausen. Even women like Elisabeth Junek from Czechoslovakia or the French variety girl Elle Nice.
Aus Paris, die früher übrigens mal Moulin Rouge-Tänzerin war, nachdem sie Rennfahrerin geworden war. Und auch die großen Herren der Rennszene, also wenn ich Namen nenne, aus Italien Achille Varzi, Tazio Nuvolari, aus Deutschland dann Rudolf Caracciola, Hans Stuck und auch in der Schweiz ein Escher zum Beispiel, ein Lepori aus dem Tessin und aus der Tschechoslowakei der damaligen die bekannte tschechische Rennfahrerin Elisabeth Junek, auf Tschechisch Eliška Junkova genannt.
Reportage vom Klausenrennen. Natürlich können wir Ihnen ja nicht
23 lady drivers fought the Gentlemen's League at the Klausen until 1934. Their weapons? Showing a little bit of knee and dangling a disdainful cigarette. Like Fräulein Emma Munz from Zurich. She made it to the rostrum back in 1929. And Junek, who only participated a single time, overtook young Caracciola in a heavy blizzard to come third. The men defended their castle with works driver Louis Chiron, and Louis attained 3 Klausen victories over the years. Hans Stuck fought his way through the curves in 1929 to come in second, only 2 seconds after the supercharged Bugatti 35B. No chance against Chiron. This lady killer from Monaco also made it to the Altdorf prize giving in 1930 with his 16-cylinder B45. And how did the locals recognize the drivers?
Ich weiß auch nicht warum. Wir haben gewusst, welche Farben sie fahren, dass die Italiener.
Well, we heard the sound. We knew who came up the hill, the 80-year-old says, because we recognized their colors, like British racing green or silver cars from Germany. We had no radio or newspapers at that time, but I watched the racing when I was 5 or 12 years old. The most famous of them all, Rudolf Caracciola. These are the shots of his unbeaten Klausen record in 1934, 15 minutes 22.2 seconds. At an average speed of more than 83 kilometers per hour, his Mercedes W124 literally flew to glory over the gravel and dust. His only serious competitor was Hans von Stuck, who survived, for example, a fractured skull, broken bones. In fact, they once carried Long John Stuck off the course in a body bag. Here is the C3 replica with 16-cylinder 520 horsepower engine. Caracciola, unbeaten best, but only 2 seconds faster than Stuck. Which exceptional cars are here today?
Ganz hochkarätige Fahrzeuge da, Alfetta beispielsweise.
Terrific cars we have here, like Alfetta, Mercedes and Auto Union. But these drivers take care of their darlings and won't risk too much. For example, bringing an Alfetta to the Klausen is crazy, says Bernhard. The British drivers are fast, and the Swiss as well. Joost Wildbolz is always good for a surprise. As far as French drivers in Bugattis are concerned, let's see.
Es hat Franzosen auf Bugattis. Also es ist eigentlich völlig offen.
Jochen Maas starts on Mercedes, a 3-litre engine with quadruple camshafts for a car weighing only 900 kilograms. This W196 is legitimate successor to Caracciola's record car. If you let it, this silver bullet can reach 320 kilometers per hour. But Jochen is careful. He still drives safely down the middle of the road. But will he remember to tread lightly? Joost Wildbolz always loved a duel. Despite some terrible accidents, this star photographer and passionate race driver got no slower, just cooler. His ERA, weighing only 720 kilos empty, but with almost 270 horsepower, is a more nervous and dangerous car, and 18 years older. We'll keep an eye on this duel. But back to camp meanwhile. Here's the beautiful 4CL of 1939, Georges Kaufmann's Maserati.
Das Fahrzeug hat 4 Gänge, einen Retourgang.
It has a 4-speed box, but no fuel pump, so you have to inject by hand. Pressurize the tank to push the fuel through to the engine.
Und drückt das Benzin in den Motor rein, das Methanol. Das Fahrzeug muss man zuerst mit Benzin warm laufen lassen.
First, the car needs to be started with normal fuel until it warms up. Then you change the nozzles and plugs and change back to methanol, a special fuel. For every 100 kilometers, it will swallow about 60 to 70 liters.
Technik mit 4 Ventilen. Bitte mal lösen.
The engine has 4 cylinders, each with 4 valves, dual overhead camshafts and supercharger up front. Cooling is not by air, but by heat transfer to the incoming methanol. 3 or 4 cars like this still run, as against about 30 built. This car has an excellent history, including races in Bern, Geneva and so on. Wakefield drove it until he lost his life in the Second World War. Then the car was driven by Farrell until around 1948-49.
Das Fahrzeug dann eingesetzt bis 1947-48.
Joost has made it to the first tunnel. Jochen is approaching the Bergli, and the ERA is only 1 curve behind him. Getting ready to start. A smell of hot castor oil penetrates the drizzle. Not many of these cars are museum pieces. Most are driven by private owners who care more about technical fitness than cosmetics. In any case, a lot of delicate parts had to be replaced with identical components to suit FIA regulations. Originality shows in the end by the paintwork. A first prophecy of today's racing? Well, it's terribly smeary, but I'll try my best, Christian says. And as a local, he should know the tricky track somewhat better than the others. Even the Englishmen are tough to beat, he acknowledges. Hans-Rudi Portmann prepares. His newly rebuilt Lagonda Rapier is ready for the show. Duel Joost-Jochen. Fog is concealing their distance. Did Joost come closer? Didn't he mill out his screw heads just to save 2 more kilos? Didn't he sacrifice the long winter evenings just to have each and every part in best possible shape? Didn't he take the car apart every winter time just to be assured that the 2-litre ERA is in top condition? Or are just too many German horses ahead? .333, Philippe Douchet in his MG K3, 1100cc divided among 6 cylinders. This very rare ex-works car was built by Cecil Kimber's MG engineers for road and track racing. Thanks to this advantage, Hamilton of England broke the Klausen record in 1934 for 1000cc class racing cars. With his K3 monoposto, he registered the excellent time of 17:53.60. Vive la France! Christian's stripped 1939 Citroën on its way to second place for sports cars. Another second place for Joost's workshop pal? Confident? Well, yesterday you couldn't even see your hand in front of your eyes, he laughs. Fog just blotted out the tunnels into a black hole. He knew he had to turn left, but didn't see anything. It'll be a lot of fun today. No sooner said than gone. Curry drives a Miller 122, Earl Zborowski's Grand Prix car with an 8-cylinder 2.5-litre engine developing about 200 horsepower. This noble piece of machinery was found in New Zealand and shipped all the way to Zurich for Curry's skilled restoration. .332, Beat. Much further down the family tree, he wants to follow up the successes of the Sterkle brother bikers of Basel. This one was driven by Handley, Easton, Fischer, Pohl, and now Philipp from Aubonne shoots it to first place in the sports car category. Dual overhead camshafts and a jack hanging beneath. Lagonda Rapier. Almost at Urnerboden, Joost comes very close. Fuel rushes into the 6 cylinders of the 2-litre engine. The Roots Charger screams. Grab the silver file, but it's too late. 3 seconds too late. Definitely a different time zone for Maxwell Lane. He came a very, very long way just to drive his Bugatti 512 at the Klausen. 3-litre, 8-cylinder engine with dual overhead camshafts. Definitely worth bringing all the way from down under. This Squire 1500 SC is a very rare racing car, one of only 7 ever built. Joost at the Jägerballen. Bugatti blocks the road. 70 years ago, Stuber from Bern tried to fight off the Germans with his B51. But he did not prevail against the Mercedes and Auto Unions, and like then, he will be overtaken, sooner or later. This was Trintignant's Bugatti 35C. Lucas Huni can prove it by the original chassis number, 4941. Bugatti dominated the Klausen races from 1927 until 1930. The four-wheel drive Type 53 remained an experiment, with only 3 prototypes built specially for hill climbs. The 4.9-litre engine was not enough for this heavy car, but good enough to put up a great show. Did the locals hate it or love it? He remembers the times when beer wasn't canned yet, and careless tourists just broke their bottles on the rocks. His cows hurt themselves on the glass. At that time, people in the Alps knew how to take care of the landscape, but city tourists were not interested.
vorgeherrscht hat. Wenn man von denen, die raufgekommen sind, von denen, die da waren, die haben schon gewusst, was sie dürfen und was nicht.
During race days, farmers had to come down from the alpine meadows to protect their huts, because the crowd just broke in and took whatever they wanted. Sometimes they even left fires going, which burnt down everything. This Alfa Romeo P3 was with them at that time. First of a pre-production monoposto series, it was Caracciolo's winning car at the Klausen in 1932. With a 2.6-litre engine and 2 superchargers, he made a time of 15:50.0. Today, Robert Fink reminds the fans about Chiron and Caracciolo's great successes with the Scuderia CC, before the Silberpfeiler spelled the end for Alphas in 1934. Like then, 30,000 spectators came today. Welcome extra income for the farmers. What about Curry's memories?
Eine von den Erinnerungen ist aber, wir sind alle daher.
Well, we had to come down from Oberstaffel to protect the huts. So it was just natural to offer the people coffee and tea. With the little money they paid, he felt like a rich man. Look after the pennies, and the pounds will look after themselves.
Wenn wir etwa 10, 12 Franken können, haben wir gemeint, das sei auf der ganzen Welt, nehmen wir mehr Geld als wir jetzt.
This Fraser-Nash engine is really big at 9 litres, but the Klausen record for sheer size stands at 12 litres. The Pintade is more graceful, a legendary voiturette racing car still going strong in the mid-50s. Pure power, a Riley Brook special. Very successful already in 1936 as monoposto in Brooklands, Monterey and Crystal Palace. This means bad news for the guinea fowl. Formula 2 driver Freddie Amweg shows what you can do as king of the hill with a supercharged Lagonda Rapier. Riley TT Sprite. This works car looks back on a 67-year racing history, despite a horrible accident record. Talking about accidents, well, this man left his rubber behind, but with British effrontery, he simply cuts his way through the asphalt. With a little help from his friends, he'll make it to the top. Another ERA, youngest of the English racing cars, driven by Rainer Ott. 3 of the 16 ERAs built took part in the Klausen race this year. Her Majesty the Queen should have patronized this talented car engineer. She didn't. They went bankrupt. Probably they were not amused either. Two familiar faces, Georges Kaufmann and his 1500cc Maserati 4CL. Carlo Vögele in Alfetta, the dream of all racing fans. The Alfetta was the winning car of Farina, Fagioli and Fangio, and from 1937 to 1951 it dominated racing in Tripoli, Bern, Monza and Silverstone. To race at the Klausen, bigger wheels had to be put on. Otherwise, the only pre-war Alfetta might have lost its privates. Whether touring, sports or racing cars, they all want to be the best. To be fastest just for once, even if only a short stretch. If they make it to the top 3, top 5 or 10, that's fine. Was everything the same in the old days, or has the Klausen Memorial been over-invented?
Absolut nicht.
No, nothing has changed. Altman Curry had a little nap yesterday during the training sessions. A good sleep. You see, nothing changed at all. It's calm again at the Klausen. 500 volunteers pack their flags and bags. No more obstacles, no more danger, and no more oil. Over. And out? But there is still a story to be told. Story? What story, he says? It's the story of the Klausen Myth. A race to the clouds. A story that retells itself each time, nourished by roots deep within our dreams. It's the story of, do you remember? Of then and didn't we? Of almost and close. This story is not about winners and losers, only about people and their passion for the unique atmosphere of a unique event. Being there is everything. And holding through as well, never giving up, joining the ranks of the immortals, that is a triumph in itself. The story is told. Until the next unforgettable installment. Snow fell the very next morning.